Good afternoon and welcome to the 23rd annual exhibit of hydrogen fuel cell technologies and batteries at the group exhibit at Hanover Fair. We've been doing this for quite some time. It's been 23 years and it's always interesting to see where the market is going, what the success stories are, what's in development, and what applications are being sold right now. It's a very vibrant branch. We'll have a specialist on the stage to talk about their specific products, a very successful manufacturer and supplier of fuel cells. It's Dr. Peter Podesser, who's CEO of SFC Energy. Please welcome with me Dr. Peter Podesser.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Oh, they put me in a high chair here. There we go.
Same here.
Yeah, so now that we're comfortable, I think your company is known to many, but still we need an introduction. SFC Fuel Cells. Can you tell us a bit about the company, how long you've been there and what you do?
Certainly. Well, the company was founded back in the year 2000 as a classical startup on direct methanol fuel cells. Now we are, let's say, 18 years into this, and with all the challenges of a company being started as a tech startup, I think we made our way now in being a fuel cell system supplier to various markets, key markets. We started off selling our products to consumers. We started selling it to owners of recreational vehicles. We moved on from there to industrial customers and finally also to defense and security customers. At the end, we feel having sold now, having deployed 40,000 systems into customers' hand, which is a significant number for the fuel cell industry, we feel it was important to offer a hybrid offering as a product combining existing technologies like batteries and solar with the advantages of a fuel cell, and to put it in a system as we display it here, right next to you. At the end, we are bringing a full system to our customer, not only the fuel cell, we combine it with all the stages of the electrical value chain, power generation, storage, and efficient energy management and distribution.
When we were preparing for this interview, you used the metaphor tailwinds and headwinds. I think this is interesting because I've been here for 15 years. When we go back in time, 10 years ago, fuel cell manufacturers overstated their commercial prospects in the near future. You know, in a couple of years, we'll have 100,000 cars on the road. And there's actually been quite a fluctuation of manufacturers of fuel cells and various products. Some have come and gone. What has made you so stable in the market? You were not here promising 100,000 cars in the next couple of years, but what is your success story by comparison with the other manufacturers?
Well, I think this has been a challenge for all of us in this industry, and I would not exclude myself. In the early years, and I think the first time I was sitting here with you and one of your colleagues is also 10 years back, I think we were also giving pretty aggressive numbers. Retrospectively, I think it was important at the beginning, if you go out and try to attract people to put money into a technology, if you try to attract investors, naturally you have to describe the prospects. But I think what we all learned was that in the last 10 years, at least 50% of the time, the fuel cell technology and industry was not seen as one of the future parts of the spectrum of energy generation technologies. It has been and this is where we come from when we talk about headwinds. It was basically almost neglected, and we saw the number of suppliers here, the number of manufacturers here decreasing significantly. We saw a very strong consolidation in the industry. And maybe the last 18 months, there has been a fundamental change here of, call it macro environment and macro developments. The generation of energy with an efficient and low emission technology is now regarded as an option. Fuel cells are back on stage. Fuel cells are back on the surface. And the major trends is definitely for stationary and backup power. Depending on the various power levels, you can talk from 100 watts to megawatts. But then also the new credible attempt to get clean energy solutions. And I'm not only talking about fuel cell or battery vehicles. I think we have to think more in hybrid versions onto the streets to make sure we have, let's say, a clean environment also in the era of our kids and grandkids. And that makes, I think, the fuel cell now enjoying tailwinds. And in regards to SFC, I think the differentiator here was that from the beginning we selected our markets, our customers very carefully. We made it a point to see who has a specific benefit, which customer group has a higher benefit than the price sensitivity. And that's why we started in the luxury consumer business. We went on to specific industry segments where it's crucial, where it's critical to have power, reliable power. And that's how we went into the defense and military space and security space, where sometimes it's life critical.
And your specific technology, your core technology, I find it interesting as well because there's been a fluctuation in interest there. This is a direct methanol unit, and you are in fact specialized for direct methanol PEM fuel cell technology. Am I correct there?
DMFC, direct methanol fuel cell technology.
Okay.
Which is using liquid fuel.
Yeah.
With distinct advantages here on the logistics side, which was one of the core reasons why we started to focus on methanol only. And it's dedicated to what we call the low to mid power range, where we see ourselves in a space from a couple of watts for a surveillance system that's powering off-grid cameras on along pipelines in industry applications, but also for surveillance purposes along coastal lines. We just did the whole coastal line surveillance system, for example, in Singapore. And it goes up to 2 to 2.5 kilowatt range, which we feel is the optimal power range for direct methanol fuel cells.
When we talk about the fuel cells, I mean, as soon as we talk about direct methanol, it's sort of the engineer's dream in the 60s was a purist, pure hydrogen, pure PEM cell. And some people would say, well, methanol is kind of like a fossil fuel. I don't know. It's it involves carbon to some extent. Very, efficient use of it, mind you. But what I'm suggesting here is there are specific reasons why the combination of direct methanol and a fuel cell, as opposed to the purest fuel cell, nothing but a PEM, is a better solution. Does that play into how you look for markets for your devices? I mean, obviously, one of the things is just simply energy density and storage. Methanol doesn't need to be compressed. It has a lot of energy per volume, so it provides some very specific advantages. Does that play into the products that you design for your customers?
Well, I think definitely. If you look into this and if you see one of those cartridges, that's 10 liters of methanol. If you translate it into weight, we are talking here about 8 kilograms of weight. If you translate this into the pure world of hydrogen or batteries, you're talking about a factor of 10 to 20, or even lithium batteries, a factor of 13 to provide the same amount of energy, which approximately is 10 kilowatt hours. So there's a distinct advantage here of using this liquid fuel in terms of energy density. But at the same time, we are well aware that we have to address naturally the topics of emissions, and we had to go through all the qualifications, including, let's say, indoor operation. There are traces still of CO2 coming out of such a system, which is comparable to what we are breathing. And in terms of fuel availability, more and more we see, fortunately, also sources coming up, and we are also evaluating those very carefully, where methanol is derived from either organic waste, where you have already operational lines, or also converting gas back to liquid, which I find in the long term will be the ideal value chain here then, to have, let's say, a green solution.
Let's talk a bit about this product here, what exactly it is, what it does, and what are its specific applications, its potential applications.
Well, that's a classical hybrid system. As I said, we started off the company not selling against batteries, but really encompassing the capabilities of batteries, because there's always a good solution for somebody who needs power for 24 hours.
Yep.
That's a battery. But if it goes beyond this, the battery is good in a high level of power for a limited period of time. And the fuel cell, also our, let's say, what we call EFOY fuel cell, which is the brand we brought into the market a decade ago, stands for energy for you, is very good in providing a lot of energy over time. And if you combine them, that's almost a perfect couple, because the battery is the storage and covers the peak, and the EFOY fuel cell is the lightweight, low emission, low impact battery charger that you have on board or installed in what we call an EFOY Pro energy box. That's the classical off-grid energy source for surveillance cameras, as mentioned before, for different purposes, but that's also what we use typically in the wind industry. For all the wind measurement systems, onshore, offshore, this system runs 2-3 months without interruption. Also in our big market, the oil and gas industry, small pumps, small riser stations, where at the end you want an uninterrupted, remote controlled energy source that enables you to run for 2-3 months without having the maintenance crew sent out. And in most cases you combine it with a solar system, and then you prolong runtime, because as long as the light is there and the sunshine is there, you prolong runtimes, you bring the energy or the fuel consumption down, and it makes it even more efficient. And the total cost of ownership is the decisive point here for the customer. You bring it down and you have a dependable, weather and climate independent off-grid energy source.
Is this, can this operate indoors?
Yeah.
I love these questions because about a decade and a half ago, we had a small direct methanol fuel cell, and we couldn't get permission to bring it into this building. So part of what we've been working against is simply acceptance for the technology.
Well, we have 10,000 of systems in vehicles installed, and it would be quite a risk here, even or especially for a listed company, to run this in such an environment. Naturally, this was one of the preconditions to go through regulatory clearance for the device itself, for the system itself, but naturally also for the cartridges, means the fuel containers, because you want to be sure that's able to be used even by, let's say, the uneducated end user. You have to simply make sure it's, let's say, foolproof.
You mentioned the combination of battery and fuel cell. There have been really success stories. I always think of the forklift truck, but I think we have to go back to the nature of the batteries in general. They really don't like to be discharged fully, and they don't like to be overcharged fully. So basically, a mobile application that uses this system would use the methanol as a source of energy for charging the battery, not overcharging it, not allowing it to completely discharge. Do you have applications like that? Do you do forklift trucks or anything like that?
Well, basically every kind of installation that we do on vehicles. And as I said, it's recreational vehicles, it's fleet vehicles. For example, if you go out to German motorways, the German Authority of Transportation, BAG is the German acronym. In their fleet, we have a couple of hundred vehicles. So 100% of the fleet is equipped with an EFOY Pro fuel cell charging the battery. When they stand outside there at the motorway, at the Autobahn, and they are checking the toll for trucks, they are not allowed to idle the engine anymore and charge the battery by, let's say, the alternator with 2-3% efficiency and a disastrous CO2 footprint. What you have there is an EFOY fuel cell charging the battery in a trickle charge mode, exactly as you described it. It keeps it in the optimal state of charge, prolongs lifetime of the battery, but the customer benefit is even a different one. After 6 hours in their conventional setup, they had to drive back home to the depot and plug into the grid to charge the battery. Right now, the EFOY system charges the battery in the evening after 8 hours of shift. The driver goes back home and next day drives on to his shift again. So essentially, we increase the fleet ability by about 25%, so 2 hours per day per vehicle, which reduces their capex on vehicles by 25%. So they could afford, after initial hesitation on capex for a fuel cell, they could afford this easily in a total cost of ownership calculation. Same for military vehicles. When they are out there for a silent watch mission, 2-3 days, you cannot simply start the engine and make yourself visible and hearable, audible. You better stay there in a stealth mode, and the fuel cell charges the battery and you run your detecting devices.
It really is quite a marvelous technology in the niche environments like the forklift trucks. You need 3 sets of batteries or 1 battery with a fuel cell. And to refuel this thing, how long does it take?
Well, at the end, you can hot swap the cartridges here. And if you have, like in this setup, 10 liters of methanol, usually a camera system can run between 6 and 8 weeks. And then you schedule your maintenance and you swap it out, which is a significant advantage if you think about an application in the oil and gas industry in Canada, where you have to either drive out for a day or fly out, change batteries, or clean the solar plates here of snow. You spare this. You do this once a winter time, even if so.
So where is the market going for you? You mentioned, as we were preparing for this talk, people used to manufacture fuel cells, but really what people want are systems. It seems to me that you're really interested in developing the market, that is, going to the customers, figuring out what they want, and really tailor designing systems with a financially viable product in the end. So where's your market going right now? Where are the big developments? In what fields and in what areas in the world?
Well, I think you can differentiate this. The one is really, where is the product roadmap going, which at the end is essentially the same for all of us in the industry. It is make it cheaper, make it smaller, and higher power. So that's the usual, let's say, 3 pillars that you have in your R&D, and this is also where we put still a significant part of our R&D money into this, to make sure launching the next generation of our products next year will show the customer a massive benefit and still helps us to maintain profitability that we reached this year as the first fuel cell company. At the same time, markets, if we see for the overall industry, I think we have key markets on the stationary front where it's either full off-grid or backup solutions for grid-based applications. And there you can really take the whole industry, because what we see, the macro trend in electrification of our individual environment here, but then also sitting here at the biggest industry show, it's about big data, it's about IoT, and we want to have reliable power, and fuel cells can play and are starting to play a significant role. Security and defense. We have a changed, unfortunately, geopolitical situation, and governments as well as individuals have seen that they need to invest again into new technologies to, let's say, increase the level of safety, and the reliable energy supply here can be life-saving, as mentioned. So we see huge change in investments here, Germany, NATO states. This has been even before the current US administration in place, that governments realized to invest. And I just mentioned also projects like we do it in Singapore, where we did all the camera systems along the coastal line for, again, the customs and police forces there. So defense and security, significant, and I would even call it dynamic growth. And then naturally, it's clean mobility. Now we see a serious attempt towards e-mobility. The first two hypes I have experienced in my career here were so-so. Right now, there's a drive from consumers towards clean mobility. I'm not talking necessarily only zero-emission cars. There will be still internal combustion engines, clean ones, hybrid systems, battery cars, but then also fuel cell and battery hybrids. And China is the first country to strengthen, I'd say, the implementation speed and simply change legislation. So there is regulatory environment changing. And we have been good in delivering APUs, secondary power, to vehicles now for more than 10 years. So we see a broad use in this field. And then it goes again, understanding batteries and going higher power.
Well, it certainly is a dynamic market. I think your success story is exemplary for several people here. So we'll have to keep in touch. I invite everyone to return to the booth just behind me. It's B70, and talk to Dr. Peter Podesser, the CEO of SFC Energy. It's been a pleasure having you here again. Hope to see you back next year.
Pleasure is on my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
And thank you very much. We will continue our conversation in just 1 minute. Joël Op de Beek, new product line director at Plastic Omnium Clean Propulsion Systems, will be up on the stage. And stay tuned. The drinks are on the house. We'll be back shortly.